Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
But we're adults. We can make our own decisions. And what was interesting about this here is this was May. I get the hysteria in February and March because no one knows what's happening.
Sure.
This thing's coming over from China. The whole world's going to crap, apparently. No one knows how to fix it. There's no vaccine, blah, blah, blah. But then we learned a lot about it. And to shut down a gym, a CrossFit gym of all the gyms you could shut down in May, when we know more about it, it was really weird. And I think I think when you just look at it objectively, it's like this is sort of a byproduct of some of the weird ways in which everyone is looking out for their jurisdiction and then not really like abiding by common sense. What I mean by that is Mayor Cooper is in charge of Nashville, Davidson County. So he's going to make his laws. And then across the county line in Brentwood, you have the YMCA, which Evan said is the busiest gym in the state of Tennessee, which is crazy. 10 minutes from CrossFit. And they're open and people are coming in and out. And it's a YMCA, which means, no offense, but your health per attendee is probably not quite as good as a CrossFit gym. And so now you have a less populated, better gym, 10 minutes from a more populated, higher chance, I would think, of spreading. And it doesn't really make sense logically. But it's like everyone's looking out for their own. I mean, you see it kind of at scale right now with like people fleeing California.
Sure.
That governor's looking out for his state and he's just going to do what he needs to do, I guess. Then people are going to make decisions based on there. And right now, a lot of people don't like those decisions as being made and they're leaving California and coming to other places. So the risk here was Evan's in a really bad position because, I mean, shoot, if Evan had been shut down for a long, long period of time, people would have to leave. You'd have to. And now the poor guy's out of business.
Sure.
But
it's not like a CrossFit gym membership is, super cheap.
No, it's not super cheap and it's not mandatory and it's totally, voluntary and I mean, it's a free market. So if people aren't going to keep paying that membership for if they can't go to the gym. But during that time, what I think got missed a lot with COVID, with shutting down this gym in particular, I had a direct experience with that. But I think it's a bigger thing with COVID is, when they shut that gym down, I can't go to the gym now. And if I'm not going to a gym, it's a bad snowball for me. Like I'm not as healthy. I don't feel as good. And quite frankly, I go into a bad place mentally. Like it's not a good snowball in that direction at all. And I think we're seeing that kind of at scale now with COVID and the social distancing and the impact that's having on people's mental health and depression and suicides are up. Alcoholism's way up, those types of things. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I agree with all your sentiment here.
Yeah. And you touched on it, the compounding effect that it had on so many of us that use CrossFit as obviously a channel to stay healthy, stay fit, keep our bodies stressed, in shape, but also just it's almost like a break and release because there is a lot of the community side of it, getting to talk to the guys, getting to see you every day, talking, just chatting about the day is kind of like a stress reliever. So,
oh yes,
it was just multifaceted, the things that were being taken away. And the thing that bothered me so much about it was that Cooper elected to just do a blanket policy. He didn't take the time, and it wouldn't have required an exorbitant amount of time. I know the guy's busy, but all he had to do was be able to differentiate between a mega gym and a boutique gym.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple. Take the time to iron out and understand which business. He just said, no, let's just shut everything down.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be closed. And it's like, man, what you're doing there by not taking the time to differentiate between the two has a dramatic impact on your citizens.
Yeah.
And at a time where I feel like we need to be at our healthiest.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be at our healthiest, not only physically, but emotionally and socially.
Yep.
That's when we need it. And he just yanks it all away, thinking it's under the flag of greater good.
Yep.
It's like, man, no. I think it would be best in this scenario you leave it up to us adults to make our own decision about our life.
Yes.
And that was the part, the ending part of the last thing I said on that post was that, every day is a risk. We're taking risks every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're statistically more likely to die on the way to the gym than we are to get COVID.
Yeah.
So every day is a gift, and to just do that, it just really didn't sit well with me at the time.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, there's a massive difference between Planet Fitness, where they're serving cookies and pizza, and you're just sort of walking on the treadmill quite a lot, or over there pumping some weights or whatnot. But there's a very big difference between that and a CrossFit gym. So I agree with your assessment. Let's put a little bit more time and effort into it. And furthermore, my understanding is that gyms, through this whole process, at least in Davidson County, gyms were largely tracking with restaurants and bars. Is that your understanding? Like whatever the restaurants and bars were kind of allowed to do, the gyms were allowed to do. It wasn't like gyms were open when restaurants and bars were still shut down, right?
So
they sort of tracked the same trajectory.
I'm not fully confident in this memory, but I want to say that gyms were they were more harsh on gym owners than they were restaurants, because I think that there was a point in time where restaurants and bars were allowed to go to 25%, but gyms were still in like that secondary after the fact phase of reopening to where they could come in. So at a minimum, they were equal, which was pretty tough. I mean, the toughest of any business.
Yep.
But there may have been a little bit harsher,
which is crazy.
Which is wild,
crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, I just just a total difference of opinion. As somebody who is really conscious and constantly is trying to study and optimize my own body, for me, I feel like I know what's best for myself, and to have somebody not me tell me what's best for me, when it's like, man, I study this every day. I'm tracking everything I do. I track daily to try and optimize how I feel. But yet this guy who I put the quotes behind, health department, coming in and basically being judge, jury, and executioner of not only my personal health, but like I said in the post too, is this gym owner, he's got a family. He's he's on his way to having his third child, and he's already lost half of his members. And it's like doomsday's approaching, all because you're like, you don't want to take the time to differentiate.
Yes.
It's really just a bad situation for me.
It is ironic when you think about it that, and I don't know Mayor Cooper's details, and I don't need to, but I think it would be safe to say he's probably a little bit overweight. Just a little bit.
Absolutely.
So you have that, and then you have these health inspectors that walk into that gym a little overweight. And that's like one of the biggest things. I mean, obesity, age, certainly pre-existing conditions. I mean, those are things where COVID is not so kind to. So you have what seems to be people not living a super healthy lifestyle, maybe not caring so much or seeing the value so much in activity and exercise and eating clean and getting sunshine and having, make sure you're taking the right vitamins and those types of things, really not caring or seemingly caring or paying too much attention to that, making these laws that has a direct impact on sort of like a high-performing physical specimen such as yourself. I mean, it is kind of ironic when you think about it.
It's super strange. I mean, we take it for granted in this country. I've taken that for granted for my previous 38 years on this planet. I've never thought that one day someone could come in and overrule like my day-to-day life like that and have a tremendous impact in this country. It's a blessing that I've had that ignorance up to this point. It's definitely something that I'm really grateful for. But man, when you shine that light on it, and again, I even phrased it in my quote is like, I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but how is this not tyrannical? I mean, this is basically the definition of it here.
Yeah, it really is. But the other aspect that you touched on too, that I was hearing, Megyn Kelly just started a podcast in the last 2 weeks, I think, and she was talking yesterday. I was listening to her conversation with Candace Owens a little bit. And one of the things they were discussing, which you also touch on in this post, and you just brought it up, is that there is risk built into everything we do all of the time. And like you mentioned, we're at a greater risk driving in the car through the traffic to get to the gym than we are going to CrossFit Forte and contracting COVID there. And the media is doing something right now that is pretty unprecedented, and certainly they're not doing with all things, which is tracking the cases and the deaths so specifically and so no, not specifically. That's not the right word, although that works too. But so dramatically and so pervasively, and they're not tracking deaths, so far this year from tobacco, which tobacco is the biggest killer we have in this country, and it's totally legal, and people are doing it every day, and no one's talking about it. Like 500,000 people die every year in this country from tobacco use. Well, they're not. The news is not tracking that. They're not tracking deaths from car accidents. They're not tracking deaths from alcohol overdoses, which is a massive killer in this country as well. So there's a lot of things that they're not tracking, but they are tracking the COVID deaths. And so by nature of, these news outlets that have a monopoly sort of on people's time and attention, they're basically discipling the people of America. I mean, this is something that TJ mentioned, our pastor at in a meeting, a few weeks ago. Like, but right now the church is being fairly well out discipled. You know what I mean? By all the news and everything that's going on, there's this inundation of information and drama and partisanship. It's crazy. But anyhow, just to bring it back to the point of there's so many risks that we all take every single day. Whether I'm on my phone a little bit, and you see this all the time, if I'm on my phone a little bit driving down the road, I'm endangering you. No one's talking about that. But if we happen to walk within 12 feet of each other and, you don't have a mask and I do, and
here comes the sirens.
Here comes the sirens.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. And I can't speak to, the editors at these media outlets and but I think the common sense everyday person like myself is what I consider. I definitely know that something else is going on there. There's ulterior motives there, a reason why they want to spend that. And it's really easy to get, because that's the thing too. And I try and find where we're responsible for it in some degree. I always try and look inward first when I'm confronting a problem. What did I do to contribute to it? And I think as a society, we've gotten to this point where we're consuming this stuff.
Right.
They're definitely, you got to give them some credit. The media, the editors and the outlets, they understand what it is that we like to consume.
Yes.
And definitely COVID's one of those that's right up there where people can't help but click on it and look at it. I mean, is the everyday person going to really be intrigued by another person dying of tobacco use, even though that it's such a huge factor? So I'm not trying to defend media at all, because I think that they're playing a huge negative role right now in us as a society. But I do think we need to think about what we're consuming. And the big takeaway from me is that I don't know if everybody has the ability. I hope they do, but I hope people are conscious enough of what they're doing to be able to acknowledge it and say, yeah, we get it. I mean, because that's what I did with the whole COVID thing. If I truly thought that the thing was as dangerous, I mean, that's why the timeline of that post is important, because in February, March, I didn't know. I mean, who's it targeting?
Yeah,
I mean, this could be bad. I'm not going to out of the gate say, don't put pressure on my gym to close. What are you talking about? No, I went through the waiting period too, which I think any rational person would do. It's just the follow-up of it is really what stood out to me.
Yeah, agreed.